Hi and welcome to another gaming video, and in today's video I want to talk about DSi. Now, early on in my DS life I never really saw the point of the DSi. Moved from a DS Lite straight up to a 3DS, didn't really see that the DSi added much. Moved on a little bit and sort of grew my collection of DSs, and in there came a DSi, and it is a good console. It's a bit like a DS Lite, but it's got a bit more to it. You've got your cameras on it, you've got your built-in memory and storage and an SD card, etc. But once you look beyond that, what is the point of it? Where does it fit in the DS timeline? And I'm not knocking the DSi, well, I am a little bit actually, but it just seems like a bit of a pointless console. Now, I can understand the DSi XL because it brought something different to the table, and while the DSi had the DSi store and built-in storage, it just felt a bit like a glorified DS Lite, but not quite as good. Battery life was down from the DS Lite, and you lost the Game Boy Advance slot. So what advantage was there of looking at a DS Lite and looking at a DSi and going for the DSi? If I was looking at a console to play DS games and my two options were DS Lite and DSi, I would pick the DS Lite. However, my favourite games console for playing DS games on is the DSi XL, and purely because of the XL screens. The other bits and pieces that you get with it that were already on the DSi, like the cameras and the built-in storage, not really much of a pull from me. If there was a DS Lite with XL screens, that would be perfect. Whereas the DSi sandwiched in the middle, it just seems like a bit of a pointless console. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because I really do like the DSi. I just, maybe at the time, the cameras, the storage, etc. Yeah, that was great. But then they moved on. Then they moved to the DSi XL, and then the 3DS and the 3DS XL. And the DSi really just seems to have no place in that timeline that is unique to itself. If you want to play Game Boy Advance games, you skip the original DS because it's fragile and the battery life and the screens aren't great, so you'd go for a DS Lite. If you wanted to play just DS games, then you would go for a DS Lite. If you wanted to play DS games with a big screen, you would go for the DSi XL, and then if you wanted to play 3DS games, you'd skip all of those and just go and find a 3DS or a 2DS or a 3DS XL model. The DSi doesn't really seem to fit, especially now maybe, where we've moved on and we've got newer consoles. But I would say even at the time, I just don't think there was enough to pull all those that already owned DS Lites onto a DSi. And I kind of stand by that. I got a bit wowed by the DSi when I first bought one, only about 2 or 3 years ago. And it's a great console, it looks good, it feels nice, but there are better consoles and consoles that offer more features, even if that is just the DSi XL with its larger screens and improved battery life, which almost matches the DS Lite. So I hope you can see sort of where I'm coming from. Original DS, good because it was innovative, but the DS Lite was far better. DSi, not too bad, but the DSi XL was fantastic. It's larger screens, it's better to hold, and the battery life is superb. And anything other than that, anything further on than that, you're going to be looking at playing 3DS games, so you're going to need a 3DS and upwards. So for me, the DSi has had its little wow moment for me. I've been quite impressed with it, and like I say, it's a great console. If that's what's on offer to you and it's a bargain price, then grab one to play DS games on. But if you are wanting the full DS experience, you either go for a DS Lite or a DSi XL with those lovely, huge dual IPS display screens, and go for the whole experience. I have two main DSs that I play. One is my DSi LL, which is my Japanese XL, which I use for DS games purely because of the insane battery life. And if I want to play 3DS games, then I use my new 3DS XL because I like the bigger screens and it's a bigger console and the battery life is pretty good. But you can't beat a DSi XL for big screens and massive battery life. That's me rabbiting on about how I never really saw the point of the DSi. Then I bought one, enjoyed it for a little while, and realised that there were better consoles like the DS Lite or the DSi XL, or just go and buy a 3DS and you can play any of those games. But the problem with the 3DS upwards is the battery life really just couldn't match anything before that. My original 3DS pushes about 5 hours battery life, whereas I can get about 14 hours out of a DSi XL, and I've heard people push up to 20 hours out of a DS Lite. And if you are looking for an on-the-go gaming machine, the DS Lite and the DSi XL is the one you're going to get the most gameplay out of before you need to charge it. So that's my little squash on the DSi. Good console, but there are much better and they offer a lot more. Let me know what you think. Link, like, subscribe, enjoy.